theme of future roots and reparation, I'd like to invite to the podium our first moderator of the afternoon, Chris Desai, who will sit with panelists Tariq Brown, Memphis Ayowade, Shara Beckley, and Kiki Oniwinde. First, allow me to tell you a little bit about our esteemed moderator, Chris, for those minute number of you who don't know him. Chris is a world-renowned entrepreneur, philanthropist from humble beginnings in Leicester, who has made considerable contributions to the United Kingdom and beyond with his organic luxury fashion brand, Vayu, his registered charity, the Vayu Foundation, and his two global projects, U-Ocean 2050 and U-Earth 2050. Chris, being mixed race, with his upbringing stemming from Africa, India, and the Caribbean, strives to work with isolated and underserved communities daily. Chris's accolades include being voted in the 40 Under 40 Awards for Climate and Sustainability, being a BBC winner of the Make a Difference Awards, and many more. Join me in welcoming Chris to the podium, where he will introduce his guests and engage us in an insightful discussion on building tomorrow's leaders today. Chris, please come.
Well, I've got the graveyard shift, and that always means after everyone's eaten. So I've got to wake everyone up today. Thank you so much for that very, very kind introduction. It's an honor to welcome you to this panel. It's called Future, Building Tomorrow's Leaders Today, exploring every impact now for tomorrow. Across the African and Caribbean diaspora, we stand at a pivotal moment, I believe. One that calls us to reimagine leadership from the traditional models, and especially through the lenses of legacy, equity, and empowerment. The young people we nurture today will define the next era across our nations, communities, and industries. So without further ado, I would like to make this all about my amazing panelists, which I'm honored to have. Can I have to the stage Shara Beckley? Round of applause. Do you want to sit at the end? Yeah. Shara, a distinguished powerhouse who bridges the corporate and voluntary worlds. That's what I really loved about her, actually, that it's not just community, it's not just corporates, it's that bridge, which makes her actually have an outstanding point of view of the world, helping to make sustainability in carbon markets more transparent, investable, and especially inclusive. Next guest, Memphis Ayode. Round of applause. Memphis is an educator, author, and community leader, working with young people, schools, and social enterprises, which is a big part of my heart, to inspire purpose and leadership at every level. Next to the stage, you all know her, she's literally famous in this room, Grace Munyuri. To the stage. I don't even think I need to read her title. She speaks for herself. A non-profit founder and advocate empowering young African girls through education, mentorship, while driving accountability with structure in the tech and data sector. Oh, 2 rounds of applause for Grace. Maya, you already got this. And then we've got Tariq Brown. Round of applause. Can you come to the stage, please? Tariq is the founder of a CIC called House of Vox, facilitator, poet, and public speaker with experience in youth development, career programming, and community engagement. And that's why this panel is going to be absolutely phenomenal, because we've got a legacy of different people here. Quick thing, is Michael part of this today? No, we don't need. Okay, that's fine. So together they represent an ecosystem that shapes future leadership, business, community, and education alike. Let's explore how we can act today to build a future where every young person, regardless of background, has the power to perform and lead. So, without further ado, welcome to the stage. If you want to grab a microphone, that might Be good. I'm just going to jump into it. Shara, for yourself, you've worked across both the corporate and voluntary sectors, which I think really gives you a specific point of view. A lot of the times when we hear from corporates, they have no understanding of on-the-ground work in communities. And when you hear from the voluntary sector, they have no understand how you make something traceable, investable, when you're talking about capital and things like that. So what lessons can be shared between the voluntary and the corporate sector to specifically make carbon offsets and community-led initiatives more investable, transparent, and impactful? Because that's the only way that we're going to drive big finance into Africa. Is the mic on? We'll check your microphones as well.
Sting?
There you go.
It's working. Thank you very much, Chris. I think the first point is really around education, to get us all on the same page. And just to level set, how many people know about the voluntary carbon market? Perfect. So what I say is going to be new and interesting. One quick stat to start. So Eco Marketplace last year looked at some analysis, and in 2024, the amount of finance that went into Africa from the voluntary carbon market, about 13 million carbon credits. That's the amount of sort of carbon sequestered from the atmosphere. That raised about $80 million channeled to Africa. The Africa Carbon Markets Initiative has an ambition to get to $6 billion USD per year by 2030. I.e., there's a real opportunity via the voluntary carbon markets to channel finance to drive transformational change. Right now, there's a developmental study that shows that about only 2% is being untapped with regards to estimated carbon credits. And like, what are these carbon credits? Really, it's about change on the ground. We can use clean cooking, for example. I know there's so many stats here, and we're all working either in development or investment, but it's about changing lives. The Clean Cooking Alliance did some analysis, and we know it's about 1 in 3 people globally still live with sort of indoor air cooking. So whether that's fired by firewood, indoor, it's causing about 3 million deaths per year. That is more than malaria, diarrhea, and tuberculosis combined. And like my organization, Climate Impact Partners, we've been in the voluntary carbon market for about 2 decades. And way back, we set the first methodology in Bangladesh to measure the amount of carbon that is being calculated for shifting from indoor air cooking so that companies could fund the scalability of some of these projects. And that's what it's really about. It's about transformational change and mind shift. If, going to get firewood is quicker, but it's actually causing so many deaths, there is an alternative route. And there's an alternative route that makes economic sense. And I think that's the link and the shift. There's another project in Zambia, which is more focused on reforestation and working with farmers on the ground. The voluntary carbon market is an example project, actually, because it sets a clear structure on a shared funding model, where 60% of the finance goes directly to farmers, and then at least 70% of all the money that is being funded by corporates anywhere around the world, that's staying within Zambia. And there's very clear and transparent models, and that's where we need to get to so that everyone understands, unless it makes good business sense, we're not going to shift what we're doing. We're not going to, change from burning in fossil fuels internally.
Thank you for that. And that sort of leads me on to my next question. Memphis, this is for yourself. Yourself, right, have had your own CIC, I believe, for over 4 years. So how can, say, a social enterprise inspire young people, whether it's here or in Africa, to actually come up with solutions, right? Because a lot of the times, I tell my mom, stop using Bluetooth headphones because it's frying your brain. And she's like, oh, that's not a real thing, right? Speak to a young person, they're like, I've seen a CAT scan that Bluetooth makes your brain swell. This is kind of recognized around the world. So in social enterprises and young people, how do you think that message could translate when it comes to impact, when it comes to solutions, even if it's not carbon, but from a youth perspective, how do you see that impact translating from the young generation going forward into the future to be able to help the elder generation adapt to these things?
Great question. For context, I'm a director for CIC, so I don't actually own it.
Okay, director.
Yeah, so I just help like with the governance, the policy, the strategy. But I've been at that CIC for about 4 years. The founder's a very amazing lady. I think something I like to say to people is there's many people who, in the generation we live in, we are very informed generation, but we don't always use that information accurately or correctly. And I think if we learn, most people are not informed, so they follow the norm, but if once we learn to actually distinguish what's the correct things to do, it will help us with moving forward, especially, I think sometimes, at times, the younger generation may have ideas or solutions, but it's not always been pushed forward. And something I've seen from when I've worked with organizations or whenever CICs work with young people or charities, what's really important is making sure that the young people are actually involved and their voices are being heard. Because if the voice is not being heard, then this is a bit of tokenism. And essentially, it's just a checkbox exercise, but you don't really want that. That's how I would kind of answer that question, if that makes sense.
No, thanks so much. That leads on to Tariq, actually. Yourself, obviously, you work a lot around youth leadership. So what does authentic youth leadership look like to yourself? Especially, you know, like when you were saying actually earlier in the conversation, resources are limited. So if resources are limited, but we need to get things across the line, what do? You know, visibility is limited as well. How do you put young faces on the map to create solutions that can have a global impact or a national or community impact?
Okay, yeah, it's a brilliant question. I'm still not over the fact that Bluetooth makes your head swell. Yeah, when you said that, I said, I'm throwing away my headphones. Good afternoon, everybody. There we go, all right. So yeah, my name is Tariq, and especially when you're talking about youth participation and leadership. So I was fortunate to be at ACSIS last year. I'm a GK ambassador, so for those of you who don't know, Grace Kennedy, they do a Jamaican birthright program where they select young people, one young person from the UK, 2 young people from the US, and 1 from Canada to go for an all expenses paid internship in Jamaica. So I was selected to do the GK ambassador program in 2024.
Well done.
Thank you very much. But I think when we think of like youth participation and meaningful youth participation, I think it goes down to very simple points that we can avoid sometimes. And we don't need resources to know, or for a young person to feel like their voice is valued. That when they get into the room and they present their opinion and their decisions at the table, are they being implemented? Are they being listened to? Are you taking their context in consideration? Because I think a lot of miscommunication happens with the older generation where there's certain challenges that you went through, and then it's a comparison, it's a direct comparison to the challenges that young people are facing today. It's all relative. It's all relative, and I think it's important to have the empathy and understanding that, you know what, my dad had to go through a section of racism and limited opportunities, but I'm now living in a completely new environment, and if my parents or the adults around me are not flexible to my context, then they're never really gonna support me in the way that I need to thrive. So I think it's coming from a place of understanding. So now, briefly, I work for Young Minds, which is a mental health charity. I manage the youth panel. And my thing is, 1, intergenerational conversations, which is an exchange of information. It's not adults just passing down wisdom to young people so they can implement. It's about young people also educating the adults, because young people are closest to where change is. And when we empower their voices, being a poet myself as well, like your voice is very powerful. Your lived experience and being able to communicate that is very powerful. And you need to give young people the platform to feel like they are appreciated and their voices are heard. So I don't feel like you need resources to do that. I feel like you need an open mind and you need people that are going to show encouragement and enthusiasm to having young people in the room.
Okay, I'm expecting a, yeah. I'm expecting a live performance of this later, so stay around. That, to be honest, leads us on, and this, let's turn the screw a bit here, right? In the UK, the African diaspora and the Caribbean diaspora face difficult tasks, right? But they're very different circumstances than those in Africa, right? We've had this many times. We've had partners that have gone, we want to give this to the school you're working at in Africa. And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. They don't have electricity. Right? Let's talk about electrification before we talk about other things. So Grace, going straight over to you, because I know you like this. Your nonprofit empowers young African girls through education and mentorship. What does real empowerment look like actually on the ground versus the diaspora say here? That both have challenges, but I think those challenges are very separate. I think being in the UK, we are privileged beyond words compared to, to our families abroad as well.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a valid question. And the truth of the matter is, when people want to support Kakimita mentorship, the first thing they tell me is, oh, I think Grace, you should arrange a Zoom call. I'm like, the schools we support, they do not have electricity. The school, one of the schools we have partnered with, the ICT room is being used to store construction materials. It is being used to store the beans and the maize that will be eaten for lunch. Yeah. So I was there thinking, first of all, we need to get laptops for them or desktops for them before we even start talking about how are we going to empower them with data and the AI skills. Because I had someone who wanted to start the AI conversation with them. I'm like, they have not even seen a computer. So what is AI? You're just confusing their minds more. The other thing is, you need to make sure that on the ground that people are empowered to even get that access to education, because there's one curriculum, there's one exam in Kenya, it's called a pre-tech, and one of the schools we've partnered with, it has 939 girls, and the school knows automatically these girls will fail this course just because they don't have the laptops or the computers, or even the teachers themselves, they don't even know anything about tech. So it really needs to start from ground up, giving them the resources first, and just giving them the opportunity to study, because some girl that we mentor came to us and told us that I am being married off just because I do not have 80 pounds to pay for my entire school year, so I am being married off to this man to go and live with him so that he can cover that 80 pounds. And I was just thinking to myself, this is, if it's supporting this young girl, it's like £8 a month or something like that for them to be in education for the whole year. So there are other pressing matters before we even start talking about mentorship and giving them the skills, like supporting them in their education and giving them the resources that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. And going on to the final question, I completely relate to what Grace is saying. This is the situation in 7 out of our 7 schools currently. We've had students actually leave the school when we've addressed certain things, it's happening, say, at home and things like that. 2 weeks later, they've moved to Nairobi and they're married at 13, right? Things like that. So this happens daily. This is not something out of a make-believe book. It's on the ground. And if we're going to, I'm always looking for solutions, right? We can talk about the bad things, but how do we do solutions? So we've got a lot of corporate kind of talk in the room today, finance, things like that. On a corporate ESG perspective, and Cheryl, this is for you, when we talk about better collaborations with grassroots change makers, whether that's in London with Tariq, whether that's in, Africa with Grace, how can the corporate world basically empower young people in a genuine way? Not that we would just give you something for free, but we will look at the actual barriers to education, the barriers to food, barriers to water, whatever it may be. How can corporates be more authentic in their giving or their empowerment, whatever it may be, in your perspective?
Thank you. Love this question. I'll look at it through the lens of what I do in the working with corporates on their net zero or environmental programs to which they need to buy carbon credits, which are the projects that I mentioned earlier. One example is working with an organization called the Girls' Day School Trust in the UK. They have about 28 private schools around the UK. They're funding or buying carbon credits from a project in Kenya, a water filtration project, funding water filters just outside Nairobi in schools, and speaking to the principal, talking about how do we bridge that gap. One of the key differences she noticed in the pupils, aside from, number of days off sick from polluted water, was the confidence in the students. Now, here's an example of a school or an organization in the UK. They have a target to get to net zero, so that's the channel that they're using to fund a project in Nairobi that has impact beyond the environmental benefits. So there's a real opportunity. People do things because they have to. Right now, there's a real clear requirement for organizations to take action on their footprint. And we have an opportunity back home to develop projects that are transparent and structured to benefit those pupils back home.
Amazing. I just want to say thank you for your insights today. A big round of applause for the panelists. And in closing, I think everyone, the difference here as well, right? Everyone in this room isn't required to be here today. You've chosen to be here today. You've chosen because you care, because there's opportunity, and there's going to be some real life impacts 2026 when we have this conference again. Thank you all for listening. There you go. Well done, guys. Okay. There you go.
Okay. Thank you, Chris and panelists, for reminding us that the future is not a distant horizon. It is being built by the leaders we nurture right now. And we're going to go into something a little special from our fantastic timekeeper, Miss Good, who's going to deliver a monologue from her play, Why Did I Get Married?
I'll use this one. I am H.J. Harrison. I'm representing a group of single black Christian women, 7 so far and growing. We are building a class action lawsuit against the church on behalf of the single black Christian women for church hurt, emotional and psychological trauma brought on by involuntary singlehood and involuntary celibacy. We believe that the church has a case to answer to for the high percentage of single black Christian women. We further assert that the church has a case to answer to for insufficient and suitable men for our women for life partners. The church is not above the law. it is our duty to hold the church accountable for its crime against the single black Christian woman. There are so many horror stories, so many painful experiences, so many shared testimonies of women wanting to but unable to get married. There are so many women ready to testify and answer the question, why didn't I get married? And believe you me, the most common denominator is the church. So, who's to blame? The brothers in the church? The sisters in the church? Or the entire church? Come and be part of the audience. You'll be the jury too. And it's a play. It's not just funny, it's hilarious. Written by Alan Charles, Why Didn't I Get Married? It will be shown in Hackney Empire on the 1st of February and the 15th of February at Catford Broadway. Thank you. You'll be able to get tickets. I will be selling tickets, so here's the flyers.
Please support Masai. That was wonderful. So we'll give her a few minutes because she's actually coming back up to moderate our next panel. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Oh my goodness, where do I start? She really needs no introduction. Masai Good is a multifaceted professional, as you can see, with over 2 decades of experience across corporate administration, creative arts, and international project promotion. Her career spans roles as executive PA, event coordinator, and project manager, where she has supported high-profile leaders, organized international conferences, and managed artists, authors, and cultural initiatives. Alongside Masai's corporate career, she's an accomplished actor, as you can see, and she's also a model, with credits across stage, screen, and television in the UK, US, and the Caribbean. Dare I say we have a bit of a celebrity in our midst. Masai is also a published and catwalk model. And I am not finished yet. In 2022, Masai was crowned Miss Elegance UK. Wow. Whether delivering precision in administration, presence on stage, or impact in community initiatives, Masai brings professionalism, creativity, and passion into every space she steps into. So let's welcome her into our space again right now with a big round of applause as she comes up and introduces her guests.
Nearly. So who's going to come to the play? I'll be selling tickets, yeah? So contact me. Okay, let me catch my breath. Okay. Whether I'm on the stage or on the screen or in the community spaces, one truth is constant. Our stories are powerful tools. They shape identity, shift economies, and redefine what the world believes is possible. Today we are exploring cultural entrepreneurship and diaspora influence. How our creativity, our heritage, and our global connections are building new pathways across Africa, the Caribbean, and the wider world. I'm joined by brilliant minds who embody that influence, and together we're going to unpack ideas, opportunities, and solutions. Let's dive in. I would like to welcome Dr. Laverne McFarlane, Chief Economist of CARICOM Development Fund. I would also like to welcome Michael Burgess, previous senior diplomat, founder of Creative Resistance International. Oh, greetings. I would also like to welcome Tyreek Brown, poet and public speaker.
That's why she was calling you.
I need to give her a hug.
Right, I'm going to have an informal. I'm going to do the informal way. So I'll join you here.
I think it's on.
It's on. So I would like, can you come a little, you seem a bit far.
That's better.
I would like you all to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourselves. We have only 30 minutes, so it will be divided like 5 minutes, so you know. Just take your time, but not too much time.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay, afternoon, everybody. So my name is Laverne McFarlane. I'm a chief economist at the CARICOM Development Fund. I'm Jamaican by birth, and I currently reside in Barbados. In terms of background, I'd say I'm a regionalist at heart. I'm always ingrained in culture and from the African diaspora right through to the Caribbean. So it's going to be interesting to hear what's happening on this panel and how we can really showcase cultural entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Burgess. As our moderator said, I used to be a senior diplomat. Cultural diplomacy is very close to my heart. I currently work in the creative industry. I work as a senior producer both for the British Council, the Africa Centre. I also work as the high-level events programming manager for the Royal African Society. I'm still kind of on adrenaline high because I've been rushing from London School of Economics where I'm currently producing a symposium on African cinema and liberation. I'm the festival producer and program manager for Film Africa, which is the largest film festival in all of Europe for filmmakers of African heritage. I also we just closed the UK program of the UK Kenya season, which is an extended 8 months festival season where it's about promoting creativity both in the UK and Kenya, and it's organized through the British Council. Yes, and I am very proud to say that I was born in Belize, in the most beautiful country in the world. And I say one more thing, where we say rice and beans and not rice and peas.
Rice and peas.
Give it up to Roots Juicy, the caterers, guys. Delicious food. Oh, Juicy Roots. That's it, Juicy Roots. Go ahead.
Hello again. You didn't learn the lesson. Hello. I'm Tariq, poet, public speaker, and facilitator. I've worked within youth leadership for about 7 years now, so I'm 26. But I work for Poetic Unity, which is a charity that uses poetry and spoken word to support young people with their mental health, personal development, and education. So we go into schools, prisons, corporate offices, and we basically teach young people and older people how to express themselves, how to communicate their stories. I'm a founder of my own CIC called House of Vox, which is very similar to Poetic Unity, but we use poetry and the wider arts to help tell the stories of our communities, and then also work for Young Minds as well, which is a mental health charity. So very much embedded into supporting youth and platforming youth voices. And for me, myself as a poet and spoken word artist, I speak about people, power, and politics through poetry and spoken word, and try to intersect corporate and creative industries. So I've worked with London Stock Exchange, PwC, House of Lords, and finding a space where stories can be communicated through art.
Awesome. Wow. So I'm sitting amongst royalty too. Hello. It's awesome. So I'm not going to say much because it's about you guys. Okay, first question. How can cultural storytelling influence entrepreneurship and reshape how the is perceived globally?
Is that free food,
Yeah.
yeah? Okay. I love this question because many times I've gone into either political spaces or corporate spaces, and they say, yeah, we've got a poet. And the last person was like, oh, you know, he doesn't want any poetry, he doesn't want no art. There's no room for that in a space where we have facts and figures. Rarely do people think that storytelling has a place. But I would say, and I think everyone would agree, that the world is built on storytelling. Articles, newspapers, statements, conversations, the things that Donald Trump will say and how it shifts the markets. Everything is storytelling. And I feel like when we learn to reclaim our narrative, that's when we can start to change the minds of not only the next generation, but the previous generations before that. So I always say that there's a place for storytelling, for films, for poetry, for the wider arts, because it is a paradigm shifter. And we should be encouraging more people to communicate their stories. So I would say that's where it has its place.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you.
You know, I've had the great honor of being in spaces from very high levels, or governmental levels, to also grassroots. One of the greatest joys and honors have been working grassroots. And over the last, say, 10 months, I've seen all spectrum of the creative industry being a driving force for real change. Change that even influence government policies. And that's really important. I'm talking about whether you're a poet or a musician or in fashion or just a cultural producer, you're in making artifacts, you're a historian. And so what underpins all of that is being able to tell our story, what forms our identity. And it is the crucial right now in this day and age, and what we're dealing with when it comes to, you know, pretty much trying to wipe out whatever is DEI. And so the storytelling and cultural harnessing that sort of and holding on to a cultural identity is really crucial. And the only way to do that, at the end of the day, however we're represented, is storytelling. So it could be in film, it could be in poetry, it can be music, it could be in clothes, it could be a motivational speaker. It is all storytelling in different ways, including capitalizing on the fact that we have this digital capacity now that can really increase the reach. And so storytelling is a very important part of what we do, and we should never forget that everything that we do, whether you're literally speaking it, or you are writing it, or you have some sort of visual expression of it, it is all storytelling. It is absolutely crucial.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, certainly from where I sit, being an economist, we always have these complex theories, complex formula, empirical stuff. And if we can get storytelling to break down these barriers, to get these complex issues, these complex thought processes to the very grassroots, to the simplest of simple, in terms of translating what we consider policies, what we consider all these high-level matters that are critical to translating and transcending across borders. This is how we see storytelling really, creating that connect between what we consider complex, what we consider transnational, trans-border, to get to the level that we need to. So there is definitely a place for storytelling from where we sit. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't even have to say anything to tell your story. We can be minding our own business, living our own life, and then you'll have somebody down the road saying, oh, come knocking on your door, oh, your light is blown in your car. They are watching you. It doesn't matter what you think you're doing or minding your business, people are watching you. They can knock on your door and say, oh, I saw you, like somebody in here, minding my own business, somebody saying, oh, you're an actress, aren't you? I've seen you perform. Where is she? Maybe she just, I see you perform in a show I did 2 years ago. Minding my own business. Okay, right. What are your biggest barrier in telling your story? If you have any.
In my story, other people's stories.
If you are telling your story.
Okay. Well, I tell you, I was speaking to a very dear friend of mine who's a huge cultural producer also in Paris. And for me, there isn't a barrier per se in telling my story, because my story, I know that I'm being of service. So it is about, for me, being able to, having the access is being able to ensure that other people's stories are told authentically, and they have the access by which they're able to tell their own stories. So that's really quite crucial to me. And believe it or not, access is not the big issue. One of the biggest hurdles in being able to ensure that I'm able to execute that is to ensure that we get the support of the whole community. That's really quite crucial. People showing up, even when it is not as comfortable. For example, the weather. Still show up, because this event that's happening here today is so crucial. It is so crucial. And it is also building a case, not just for understanding how culture is what underpins everything, but it's also us being here today, build the case, the business case, that makes it important that people invest in things that relating to culture. So the biggest hurdle has been to ensure that we get more people to show up, because the access is there, ladies and gentlemen. Trust and believe. Even the funding is there. Now, we do understand with some of the funding that the application process can be quite long and tedious, but even then the funders are starting to revise that also. For example, Arts Council England.
Heard.
Do you know? So the access is absolutely there, but we all have to show up. We have, not when it's comfortable, it's when it's uncomfortable for you, you show up. If there is a hybrid experience to an event, log on. Even if you're not watching, honestly, have it in the background.
That's true.
While you're cooking curry goat or whatever it is that you're cooking. But it's important that we show up. That's the biggest hurdle.
So before you move forward, I just wanted to ask you about the Arts Council. What has changed?
I have a very dear friend of mine, going back to ACSIS. Part of the ACSIS is understanding your network. It's not just spaces, it's the network, is the space. And a very dear friend of mine is head of strategic partnership at Art Council England.
Oh.
Yes, and she's amazing. And she said to me, which was quite an eye-opener, that because there are funds that are, well, first of all, around equal opportunity, DEI, right? That that what our council tries to do in ensuring that in this access, equal access, that funding is there for black and brown organizations. And they do understand that the deterrent has definitely been the application process. So they have revised that quite, and they continue to. But it is when Arts Council or other funding streams have the opportunity for these, Q&As before an actual funding, a grant is actually launched, please show up and say that. Because if not, the application remains the same and becomes a big hurdle. So that's what they've done. They continue to revise that. And the funds still stay there, guys. Believe it or not. That's what she said. She says, Michael, the money is there, but they just need to tap into it. Yes. And which means, here's another thing. Many people who are good at writing application become a bid writer for other people.
Yeah. Help.
Really.
Cool. Thank you. We'll talk later.
Yeah. So from where I sit, I see two fundamental barriers that currently exist, not from my storytelling per se, but just listening to potential entrepreneurs in the space who have their stories, whether it's in craft, whether it's in arts, whatever the type of entrepreneurship they're trying to get into. The first one being to maintain cultural authenticity. We recognize that for some of these things to get commercial, sometimes the uniqueness, the authenticity of culture tends to be watered down. And we find that if we're not able to maintain the true rich culture that we have, because we want to go commercial, because we want the wider masses to understand what it is we're portraying. So take, for example, I met Loretta just yesterday, and she has these specific cards with proverbs on it, telling, every little make a muckle, or, who can hear with feel. So these different proverbs, there is a story to be had because there is an underlying principle behind it. But if, for example, we take it to those who are not in the know, they might not understand the interpretation. Lucky for her, she has the actual English interpretation on the back of that. So maintaining that level of cultural authenticity is one critical barrier and an area that we need to preserve going forward. And I want to differ with my panelists here, esteemed as he may be, that there is access to funding and funding is there. I'm sure. How many of you would disagree? How many of you have actually tried to seek funding and have had some issues in terms of not knowing where to go, how to start the process, and who to do that with? So, yes, so the point I'm making is that there is a disconnect between the sources of financing and who needs the financing. And that, to me, is one of the biggest barriers that we experience in the diaspora, in country, where we are not able to bridge that gap sufficiently enough because the information is not being spread both from the demanders of capital and the suppliers of capital. And it is really platforms like this, ACSIS, that creates that, bridging that gap in terms of we know where the supply is, we know where the demand is, and how do we connect the two? And I think that is important. And so I think there is a really, David and his team are really onto something in terms of bridging those gaps for breaking the barriers for financial connection where we sit.
Thank you.
Speed fire, yeah. All right. I'll be super quick. I can see the non-verbal communications going on. All right, cool.
No, it's fine.
Just going off your point on keeping the cultural authenticity, I think more black-owned media, forms of media, where our stories can't be diluted, because a lot of, when it comes to being commercial and gaining capital, a lot of it is based on the Eurocentric standard of what art is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to sound. But a lot of the times they will culturally appropriate and take that sound and make more money from it anyway. So it's like having black media forms allow us to express our stories from the ones that grab you and grab your attention to the stories that are on the ground, like people coming over to the UK and the sort of challenges that they had to go through. Has anyone watched Alterations by any chance? No? So Alterations is a Caribbean themed play that featured at the National Theatre about a man that had come over from the Caribbean and was trying to make it as a tailor. And it was going through the challenges that he faced with racism, with getting access to funding, with navigating like relationships between his white counterparts and his black community. And he basically achieved his dream but lost it all at the same time. But it's those sort of stories that we need to find out, because there's many, many people from the diaspora that are miseducated about themselves and their identity.
Yeah.
And it's because the stories are missed
Yeah.
in. So, and just quickly, a quick tidbit, Black history is not just for black people. Black history is for everybody. And you won't be able to create like an equal or equitable society without a young white boy learning the contributions of his black brothers. And I think it's important that we push that naturally.
On the financing bit, while I did mention one of the most, perhaps most popular Arts Council England, one of, as a funding stream, we have to remember that we also need to create our own funding streams in our communities. They're incredibly wealthy people in our community, and even those who are not wealthy, there's opportunities to collaborate. That's really quite crucial, hugely important. I've had the opportunity this year to produce 2 huge Pan-African conferences, and I think, is that Esther? I see Esther Sosi, one of the most respected Pan-Africanists, is here with us, guys, and a dear friend. And one of the things that I'm always reminded when I go to these events is that the movement started from us. They didn't wait on governments to start it. And therefore, for any change to happen, even in terms of funding different projects or business ideas, it has to come from us. We really need to ensure that and hence the reason I mentioned regarding access. Yes, we can go to banks and different things, but really, if we pool all resources together, just like lots of other communities do, we can do so much more. That's what I also mean by access.
Thank you. I don't know how much time we got left. Okay, how would you help in what you do concerning Africa and the Caribbean?
But with creativity.
What you're doing, yeah. Or what help do you need?
What help do I need? I think, cool. Helping people to teach, giving them the tools to express themselves. Whether you're a poet or you're a writer or just someone who enjoys conversation, teaching them how to communicate what's in here and what's felt in here and be able to get that out there. And that doesn't have to be for any means, but I think it's important because there's a lovely quote by Robert Frost. It says, "Poetry is what is lost in translation." So how many of us think about, we know what we're gonna say, but by the time it reaches our voice box, a lot of it is lost, right? So when you teach young boys and girls how to communicate and how to express themselves and that there's nothing to fear when they do that, then you'll find that a lot of these problems with reclaiming our narrative is something that everybody will be able to communicate regardless of the room. Whether there's a poet or an artist in the room, they'll be able to communicate their lived experience. So I'd say not just my organization, House of Vox. Obviously, we are a black male-centered CIC and we go into schools, but there's many other organizations that are trying to give young people the tools that they can communicate for themselves. Because not everyone's gonna have someone to talk to, but if they can pick up a pen and a page or speak to themselves, then we know that we've done one part of the role.
Thank you.
I am so honored that I have the opportunity to work with grassroots and high-level organizations, governmental, quasi-governmental, various different NGOs. And as a producer, I work not just in the UK, not just in Europe, not just in the Caribbean, but also across the continent of Africa. And so with organizations like, for example, the British Council, like recently, the British Council had a grant called the Festival Connect. And most of the work that the British Council does is to always try to connect organization or entity here in the UK, wherever the event is going to be taking place, for example, in Kenya. And recently, through the Festival Connect, I was able to facilitate and produce an event that brought Ballet Soul, which is one of the only black ballet company. There are 2 black ballet companies in the UK right now. Ballet Soul is one of them. And being able to bring them to Kenya for the Kenya International Theatre Festival was just incredible.
Thank you. I need to cut you there.
Yes.
We will talk afterwards. And
Sure.
those of you who want to talk with him can talk afterwards. Just a final word.
Go.
Yeah, thank you. So from where I sit, from the financing field, we've made 2 strategic moves in terms of helping to bridge that gap. One, we became shareholders with Afrexim Bank. So us being in the Caribbean, we want to make that connect into the continent. We've also become a strategic partner with ACSIS platform because we see that there is a need to educate on financial literacy, to educate on where you can identify those sources of finance. We also recognize that there is a role for the diaspora to play, not just in terms of remittances and in terms of giving financing, because we know, yeah, the diaspora has deep pockets, but the diaspora also has significant amount of knowledge and skills that can be transferred across the board to help entrepreneurs within the respective regions to grow and to develop. And that is the role that I'm playing in that place. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, what we have heard today is clear. Culture is power. Right?
Yep.
Creativity is currency. And the diaspora and the global network of brilliance. Thank you so much for being up here with me. I couldn't do it by myself. Well, I can do a monologue by myself. But anyway, thank you so much. Time is up. Thank you. Picture. Whoops, picture.
The model. Thank you, honey.
Good.
So can we give it up one more time to Miss Ai and her panelists? They definitely celebrate that creative industries that preserve culture while driving economic growth. I love the fact that we spoke to some artists and we spoke to an economist, that the two just must go hand in hand. And I really, really love that. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we have Miss Sandra Murphy, who is the Managing Director of Equidiet, who will speak on We Are What We Eat, Reclaiming African and Caribbean Food Resilience. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Sandra's pioneering work as an entrepreneur and equine nutritionist dedicated to advancing sustainable and regenerative solutions for animal health and welfare. You see, we're touching everything today, right? As the founder of Equidiet UK Limited, she created Equigel. This is the world's first natural, fiber-based hydration feed for horses. It's designed to improve resilience by supporting hydration, digestive health, and long-term well-being. Her ethos extends far beyond equine care, with an emphasis on regenerative agriculture and global food security. Sandra is leading the development of innovative cattle feed formulations using high-protein, species-specific crops that naturally fix nitrogen in the soil. This approach not only enhances soil health and reduces reliance on synthetic fertilizers, but also lowers methane emissions while increasing productive yield. By aligning animal performance with sustainable land management, her work creates a model of circular, resilient agriculture. So I'm personally looking forward to Sandra's presentation, as her topic, which I know is completely different from mine, is a little bit similar to a topic I wrote about when I was doing my master's dissertation many, many moons ago. And mine was called "You Are What You Eat: How Your Neighborhood Determines Your Health." So Sandra, please enlighten us and come to the podium. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to see you. I just wanted to say thank you to David and his team for organising this summit. This is my third one, so I was at the inaugural event and also last year and now this year, so it's really lovely to be here. Just get the technology right. Oh. Right, so a little bit about me. But so often, I've just heard some amazing speakers and some really inspirational panelists. And I just wanted to say this little bit before I started. So often, the achievements of black women are underestimated and overlooked and are not celebrated. Being the first is an achievement in itself, but being a black female first is exceptional, don't you think? Yeah? So, my name's Sandra Murphy. I'm a BSc Equine Sports Science, but I'm also a equine nutritional hydrotherapist and animal scientist, and I've been into horses for over 50 years. There is not many people that look like me in the space that I'm in. Believe you me, there is no one on any podiums, in the UK, that have the way I look. My daughter was actually the youngest British eventer in history at 12 years old, riding against the now UK Olympic champion. And her name's Ros Cantor. And my daughter was riding in the same competitions as her as 12 years old. But she suffered huge discrimination. And she stopped riding at 15 and got off her horse and said to me, "Mum, what do I have to do to show these people I'm good enough?" So, she was good enough, but she just couldn't cope with it. And so I took up the cause and I created I created BIRF, the British Ethnic Riders Federation, and that encourages ethnic minorities to take part in equine. So I'm actually the CEO of Equidiet UK Limited, and I pioneered the world's first liquid feed for horses. It's patented, and I become the 9th black woman in the history of the UK to get a patent since 1817. So both my daughter and myself are firsts, but we're so underestimated and so underplayed that nobody really knows about us. And plus, to have horses, you have to live in the countryside. And I'm up in the sticks. And it took me 4 hours to get here today, driving down. Thank you. So this is what, I'm going to let you know what I do. Right? This is not about me, but this is to let you know what I do and how this has changed the lives of horses across the world. This is a horse here, doesn't want to drink. You know the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink? I can. Watch this. Now that is amazing. That is an advance in equine nutrition. In 850 years, a black woman has brought this to the world. And they're the products that I do. But that's, like I say, I'm here to talk about the health of us and the health of our animals as well. So I'm going to make sort of comparisons between the two. Sorry, I'm making a bit of a noise here, sorry. So the comparisons between the two. This is the food triangle. This is what we are supposed to eat as humans, yeah? And because of that, you can see at the bottom there, that is more carbohydrates, yeah? And we should be not eating carbohydrates because carbohydrates can cause major issues. This always happens to me. Sorry. So, yeah, so basically, we're eating the wrong things. That should be inverted. I'm going to try and rush now because I'm being rushed through now. So and the same with animals as well. So we're doing a lot of grain in our feeds and we're having a lot of grain in our animal feeds. And it's really important because you know, the herbivores that we have, we eat. So we've got to make sure that they're fed healthy so that we can be fed healthy. So I'm going to try and rush through these signs. So this is how prehistoric man used to eat. Yeah, prehistoric man used to eat in this way. And because of that, he was quite ripped. He used to go up and find his food. He didn't have to get up in the morning and have Kellogg's cornflakes. It wasn't around then. Yeah, they had to find their food, and the food that they ate kept them healthy. And that's the same goes with our animals as well. Okay, I'm going to rush through it. So you can see the top one there. You know, how long are we going to last? We used to last thousands of years, but because if we eat like this at the bottom here, we're not going to last thousands of years. We're only going to last hundreds of years because of the fact that food and non-structural carbohydrates are so available to us now. Yeah, and we need to look at this diet. So if you look at this, I'm trying to, come on. Here, chronic diseases, inflammation, right? Inflammation is one of the biggest killers that we have in our health, inflammation. And so what we need to do is make sure that we're not getting inflammation in our bodies by eating the right things. And one of the things is totally preventable inflammation. Hello. I'll use this one until that one's fixed. But I can't do it. Oh, God, I can't believe this. Right, so if you look at this here, you've got omega-3, omega-6, okay? Omega-3 and omega-6. You don't think there's any difference, but omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. Omega-6 oils are inflammatory, pro-inflammatory, okay? And they have a massive effect on your physiology. And I just went back there. See the oils at the bottom there? Do you recognize all those oils? Vegetable oil, seed oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil, rice bran oil. These are all oils that are in your food. They're put in your food. These are all pro-inflammatory oils. They cause inflammation in your body. Okay? So these are the other things that cause an issue. Starchy foods, sugary foods. These are all foods that we shouldn't really be eating. Yeah, I know they're lovely. I do appreciate that, but they are having an effect on your health and your physiology. Okay, and all these things as well. Do everybody recognize these? Yeah? Do it. Hands up who eats these. Come on, put your hands up. Right? So we've got to try and avoid these things, right? So starch is broken down to glucose, first in the mouth, then in the stomach, yeah, by hydrochloric acid. So we produce acid in our stomachs, okay? This enters the bloodstream, and then insulin is produced, and this is where we get diabetes, okay? Type 2 diabetes is totally preventable, okay? I'm getting poked in the eye by a microphone. So these are some of the figures of the issues that we're having in this country, yeah? But not in this country. America's really bad at the moment as well. It's been bad, and it's getting worse, especially for children, okay? So basically, we're getting a lot of diabetes, we're getting a lot of heart disease, we're getting a lot of, oh, it's not coming out. I don't know what's happening there. But these are some of the figures, okay? We're having huge problems with these chronic illnesses, and it's because of the food that we're eating. I know, because of the food that we're eating, okay? I'm trying to rush through. So what we need to do is turn over that food pyramid. We've got to turn it on its head, yeah? We've got to make sure that we take more meats, fish, you know, avocados. Anyone love avocado? Oh, eat as many as you like. They're brilliant, okay? So avocados, but if you can see at the top is just the grains, just very small amounts. That's all we need to be having. And that's the same in our horses and our animals, our cattle and that sort of thing. So I'm just going to go quickly through here. The main crops that we grow up in the countryside are commodity crops. These go into all your processed foods. So this is what we're growing. So if you go to Lincolnshire, you won't see food in the fields. You will see commodity crops, yeah? And this is shocking because we need to be growing our own food, yeah? Which is majorly important. So we need to be growing more of these things, yeah? Cabbages, potatoes, carrots, you know. And this here is called lucerne, and I'll go on to that quickly now. So lucerne is a sustainable crop. I'm trying to work with countries in subtropical Africa and Caribbean to try and get lucerne as a crop over there to be growing, because what it does, it actually puts, it's not come up. It puts nitrogen back into the soil, so you don't have to use chemical fertilizers. So it puts nitrogen fixing. It's also drought proof because it puts roots down 16 feet down into the ground, so you can grow it in hot countries. And that will feed the cows because it increases protein to allow for growth in meat and milk yield. So it's not actually showing me the bullet points, but that's basically what it is. It fixes nitrogen. So has anybody heard of the Bovier? Bovier? Where they were putting chemicals in to stop the cows burping, farting, or whatever they call it, whatever they want to say. This was in this country. They were using a chemical called Bovier, which they hadn't researched, which actually causes cancer. Yeah, and they were putting it in all the dairy cows to stop the methane production. Now, this is terrible. In the 80s, they lost 4 million cows in the 80s, yeah, with CJD, because they thought it would be good to feed cows meat. Yeah? And you can't feed cows to cows and expect a good outcome, yeah? And so we lost 4.5 million cattle when they killed them all because of this CJD. Yeah, that causes prions in the brain of people. So they're coming up with all these chemicals. Well, I'm coming up with something that's natural, okay? And the natural part of it, oh God, there's no bullet points there, okay? The natural part of it is I'm developing a cattle feed based on what I've been doing for the last 10 years with my equine feed that's going all over the world. Yeah, so it is proven. I'm trying to develop a cattle feed that is based on the alfalfa, the lucerne, and a plant-based protein that slows down the production of H ions that reduces methane naturally without killing you and making you sick. Yeah, but I need the support in this. I need people to help support this project that I'm doing, right? So I'm nearly there. 2 seconds. Okay, so that's it really. So yeah, so I'm here to support. I'd like to know if there's anybody out there, because in the space that I'm in, there's very few black people. So when it comes to equine and anybody supporting me, they don't know anything about equine. But if I don't find some support, I'm having to, like they said at the World Horse Welfare, if you can find a white person to front your business, it will do better. Yeah? Yeah, so this is why I need some support. Anybody that's interested in finding out more about what I'm doing would be great, because in the space I'm in, they don't accept people that look like me. Yeah? Thank you.
Wow, you know when you finally learn something that you didn't realize that you needed to know all this time? Wow, that was important and impressive. Thank you so much, Sandra. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a keynote address now, and I think then after that we will go for a last break. So, I would love to introduce you to Mr. Ubukun Adebayo, who's the Group Director of Sustainable Finance and Investment Strategy at the London Stock Exchange Group. And he will deliver today's keynote speech, The Role of the Diaspora in Advancing Reparative Justice. First, a little bit about Ubukun. He is responsible for the London Stock Exchange Group's growth and collaboration strategy in emerging markets, with a key focus on India and Africa. He has driven key initiatives such as the LSEG's Companies to Aspire Africa publication, and also launched the exchange's first international advisory group for Africa, bringing together key business leaders, investors, and African regulators to solve the challenges facing African capital markets. Prior to this, Ubukun was head of LSEG's equity listings business, covering key markets in South Asia, Middle East, and Africa. Managing relationships with companies, international advisors, and regulators. In this capacity, Ubukun was involved in over 200 IPOs in London by issuers from these regions. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Ubukun to the podium.
Thank you. Indeed. Thank you. Do I have the presentation? Sorry, just final fixes. How's everyone doing? Yeah, excellent, fantastic, very good. Are we there? Shall I just kick off and then I can move on to this one? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here, and I just want to acknowledge all the great work that David is doing and putting on this amazing conference over the last 2 days. I think we should just give him a round of applause and his team for all of the work they're doing. It's been absolutely fantastic. So I just want to make a slight correction to the introduction that was given. So I am formally of the London Stock Exchange Group. I actually left last year to start and run a business called Restitution Capital. Restitution Capital is all about getting our money back. Stolen patrimony, returning it to where it belongs, to the people and the community of the Global South. So before we get to that, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of how we got there. And I have to admit, yeah, I probably am not the person that I used to be, okay? So in the old days, life was very comfortable. I was working at banks, working at London Stock Exchange. I didn't really follow the matters of my black brothers and sisters in the way that I should have done. You know, I would claim that I went to the Al Sharpton march in Brixton in '91, which I did, but I was dragged along by my sister. I also went to a prison cell to remove my sister after being arrested for throwing tacks on the floor at Crystal Palace running track when Zola Budd, the barefoot athlete, was running around the track. So I have to admit, my emancipation came from a very, very different place. Working in finance, working particularly for African governments looking to raise money in London. And I always found the same challenge, which is that African governments could not raise money cheaply. In the UK, you could raise your money at 3%. In Africa, 15%. Why? So they said, the investors would say to me, well, it's the risk. So I said, okay, we'll mitigate that risk. Let's bring in some general risk around FX, we'll change that. Let's put in some economic risk factors, we'll change that. And then it always boiled down to the fact that the risks for Africa and for the Caribbean was about political instability. And I thought, well, we've just had 5 prime ministers in this country in the same term of government. So what are you talking about, instability? And then it led me to reading some really important work around a Canadian economist who many of you may not have heard of, and his name is Nathan Nunn. He's a Canadian, and he made the link between the legacy of slavery and colonialism and how it exacerbates today mass fraud and corruption that's being undertaken by the large global multinational companies operating in our countries, in the Caribbean and in Africa, systematically exacerbating a grand architecture of corruption whereby we suffer from instability in terms of our economic and political environments based upon this infiltration of these types of companies, handing out brown envelopes, perpetuating that grand corruption. And let's look back in history really briefly. The South Sea Company, the East India Company, they were supported by the church to do that. The same sort of thing. They were the first organizations to perpetuate illicit financial flow, illicit trade flow. Today, it's no different. The multinational companies are now supported by a different type of enabler. It's not the church today, but it's the Western consultancy firm that builds the strategy for exploitation. It's the accounting firm that creates the fanciful accounting to be able to channel wealth and hide it somewhere else. And it's the legal firm that creates that continuously egregious and unconscionable business term that an African or Caribbean government does business on. So this is what continues to fuel corruption. This is what continues to support the payment of bribes. And this is what continues to keep Africa and the Caribbean subjugated in terms of economic progress. I'm just going to see if I can flick on here. So I want to show you this chart very quickly, if it comes up. Okay. This chart here, if you can see it, it might be hard for those of you in the back, but this chart shows you from the start of this century, the amount of money that has been lost through illicit financial flows. That number is estimated to be between 1.9 and 2.3 trillion US dollars. Every single year, $100 billion leaves Africa through a transfer pricing issue, through an extraction of value, through some form of illicit financial flow. Just to put that into context, 100 billion a year is more than overseas development assistance, FII, so foreign direct investment. It's more than the foreign portfolio investment and remittances combined. So if we were able to eradicate these illicit financial flows, Africa and the Caribbean would be a net exporter of credit. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? Let me further put these figures in context. So Sudan, that number you can see on there, I'm trying to look because I can't see it, but that number for Sudan, you can see there, $79 billion. That was Sudan's GDP in 2024. The DRC, the number you can see there for DRC, which is $388 billion, that was DRC's healthcare budget. Sorry, DRC's healthcare budget is $2.5 billion a year. So you can imagine the extent of what's been pulled out of the country versus what the country needs to feed its people, to heal its people. And the figure that's the most egregious there is South Africa, which you can see nearly $1 trillion worth of flows that have been taken out by large multinational companies. This would pay for affordable housing and its budget and the subsidy 10 times over for the next 10 years in South Africa. This is how bad the problem is. So lots of companies and lots of individuals and lots of all sorts of organizations are doing their best in order to try to reverse these flows. But the reality is that these flows take a long, long time to reverse. So Restitution Capital was born specifically for the purpose of reversing those flows. So what do? We are a team of professionals who have come together from legal, finance, international development, human rights, to work with sovereign governments exclusively to bring the tools of both legal and indeed the finance world to develop claims against those bad actors. So we bring civil action and cases against those companies on behalf of our governments in the international world, in OECD countries. And then when we build those cases, which generally have a very low burden of proof, the money comes back directly to those governments, and most importantly, under a managed repatriation scheme, which ensures that money is placed back into really important things in those countries. Number one, balance sheet repair and debt sustainability, so that we no longer have to rely on the IMF. Into housing, so that we're not waiting for a decision from USAID in Washington on how to build more affordable housing. On green infrastructure, so that we're not waiting for handouts from the loss and damage program at COP. And in education, most importantly, so that we, in our collective countries, can educate our most important resource, which is our young people, under the age of 18 in particular. And then on top of all of this, we're building with these countries true intergenerational wealth funds, which will allow us to receive back this stolen patrimony so that more of us like myself, who are diaspora, feel that we can go home. So it sounds ambitious what we're doing, and it is, right? But we've made a start. And ultimately, we have had a lot of backing. Our efforts have been recognized by the UK government, so we've received funding from Rule of Law UK. We have a grant from the Swedish government, CEDA, and also the Germans, GIZ. But there's more to do. And there's more to do, particularly working with the groups who are working in the area of reparations, because this is a really important thing that we must get back what belongs to us. And I think I'll finish just by saying, I used to always think that the statement that, God helps those who help themselves was scripture, and then I realized it wasn't, actually. It's nowhere. It's not written anywhere. But I think it might well be from some various Greek philosophers. But the reality is that through restitution and what we're doing right now, we are showing the global north that we are helping ourselves. We're helping ourselves back to receive that stolen patrimony. And we hope also that what restitution is doing is helping those repatriation groups, those reparation groups, to also support all of their efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a short refreshment break. This is going to be our last break for the afternoon. I would encourage you to visit the vendors one last time, because I think they have to leave at either 5 or 5:30 when we finish. So freshen up your coffees and your teas, stretch your legs for a little bit. And when we come back, we're going to hear perspectives from Ghana and our closing panel. Thank you. Oh yes, and support Miss I and her play.
you're taking photos or videos? Oh. No, I don't know what I should be telling them, but what I mean, it's about incubator mentorship. And I'm loving to be here. Now I'm being dramatic. You took a couple of pictures.
We are a prominent non-profit organisation dedicated to a single, powerful mission.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we please take our seats for the next session? Can we please take our seats for the next session?
Smallholder farmers now has a guaranteed route to the global market. Ensure Growers Association. Our name is our purpose. We are a prominent non-profit organisation dedicated to a single, powerful mission. Supporting orange growers to be globally competitive. The exceptional harvest from our smallholder farmers now has a guaranteed route to the global market, ensuring high-quality Ghanaian...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have now started the last session of the day.
...driven by our strategic partnership with Sono Ghana, West Africa's largest fruit juice processing facility. This collaboration channels the entire harvest into the industrial value chain, giving our farmers a vital, ready market. At Sono, our fresh oranges are converted into...
Hi everyone, hello, hello, hello.
Globally.
We're almost there, hang in with us please.
Live orange.
Are we ready, are we ready, are we ready? Thank you. Okay, I know that's going to be my last tea for the day before I'm buzzing on too much caffeine. I'd like you to now help me please welcome our next speaker, the representative from the Ghana High Commission, Mrs. Diana Addo, who's the Minister and Head of Trade and Investment. And she will share further insights on our theme of today, which is development and resilience, and the synergies with diplomatic relations. Please welcome Mrs. Addo to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Is that okay? Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'll stand on all protocols. Yeah, as mentioned, my name is Diana Addo, the Head of Trade and Investment at the Ghana High Commission. Is it okay now? I'm getting directed. Okay, thank you very much. I wanted to show some documentary, but I think for time, we'll go straight to what I need to say. A lot has been said, so I'm not going to repeat what has been said already, but just going to mention a few things that can be done. As we are here, we are talking about development, resilient, and diplomatic relationship. What we have done, let me say first, let me congratulate David and the team. David, thank you very much for putting this amazing program together. Last year I was a participant, and this year I was here yesterday, but today I was asked to come and do a brief presentation. And as mentioned, what are we doing as African countries? We've put ourselves together, and in the morning, the High Commissioner of Zambia said a lot, so I'm not going to repeat what she said. All that we are trying to do now is collaborate, come together as one body, and also negotiate as one body. So that's what we are doing now. And Ghana, we have trade partnership agreements with UK, and we've implemented it for some time now. We've identified some challenges in the trade partnership agreement. So we are moving forward to do some negotiation with them, how best we can do away some of the non-tariff barriers. And the critical one is the regulation challenges. So we are discussing with UK sometimes we think that these trade agreements benefit only us, Africa. It's not like that. It's mutual benefits. And therefore, we are trying to go forward to help the SMEs in UK and then SMEs in Ghana so that when the product is tested, certified, because in Ghana we produce using EU standards. If product is certified and tested in Ghana, the SME doesn't need to go through all the headache to come and do the certification here again. Same as if it is tested and certified in UK, they don't need also to go to Ghana. All they have to do is to do registration. So these are some of the things that we are discussing with UK. We've raised this issue among Commonwealth countries when we met in Namibia as well, that for Commonwealth to be able to trade and make benefits, mutual benefits as I always call it, then we really need to harmonize our standards if we really need to trade. Because immediately, I don't mention his full name, I call him Mr. T. How many of you know Mr. T? Oh, excellent. Immediately, Mr. T came out with tariff. Everybody was crying, what are you going to do? Where are you going? If Commonwealth have harmonized our standards and we are trading, we wouldn't have been crying about this. So this is one thing that as a bloc, we are discussing with countries and then we're able to harmonize our standards. And after we've gone far, rules of origin and all the things that we need to do, we are doing it. But what can we do when it comes to development? And that is one of the key things that me and you need to focus. Sometimes when we are looking at development, we are looking at big and huge things. Our data that came out this year, Ghana grew by 4.8%, 2024. But one may say, what is the impact on a common people? Somebody will say, I'm not saying common because I disrespect them. But the impact on me and you, when we mention the 4.5, what can we do best? And we are looking at development. Development is not only infrastructure, but human capital. And that is one key thing that as a country, we've taken upon ourselves: free education, do this, do that, to be able to build the capacity, train our people in TVET, secondary school, in everything, to be able to build them. And I always say that I look back and I look at those I started school with. I remember one of my uncles telling my dad, she said, woman, don't take her to school, she'll get pregnant. And then I think about this, and I look at those I started with from primary school, and I look at me now, they are far there. But because of education, that's why I can even stand here. So how can we build ourselves when it comes to education? So just like it was mentioned, I recommend, even if you can contribute £100 a year in somebody's life, please do it. You have no idea where that person will be in future. Myself and my husband took some children when my friend died. They were 4. And we took care of them. Yes, it wasn't easy, but we managed. We needed to sacrifice some things so we'll be able to help them. Now one is having first degree, first class student engineer. Imagine we didn't do that, all right? The second one just completed university. And I'm so happy, you know, a lot that we are doing. Each one, I know you're also doing something. You can add one child to it, and then you see what child will become in the near future. So I will encourage all of us. And we also talk of development, and we are looking at big investors going to our countries. Yesterday, David mentioned stock exchange. How many of us are aware that Africa Stock Exchange are growing and would like to take advantage of it? £100 every month to Africa, any country that you may have, invest, buy shares, or go into any of the, what do you call them? In Ghana, we have mutual funds. Thank you. We have mutual funds in Ghana, and we have stock exchange. Go, invest. The money, that £100 you are paying every month, will be invested into a business, and that business will grow. And by the time you realize, you see that you have done nothing, but the country will be what? Developing. You wouldn't sacrifice so much, but you might have been paying £100 every month. I've done just rough calculation that if 5,000 of us decide to pay £200 every month, how much will it be? I'm a, what do you call it, numbers person. So I like putting numbers together. And you get what? £1 million, isn't it? So this £1 million, have we thought of what it can be used for in our countries? Sometimes we are looking for big investors, but we are our own investors. So that's one thing I also encourage us to do. And when it comes to resilience, we can only patronize in our products. I went back there yesterday, I saw some products, not that I need them, but I just say, let me invest in these products. So I bought some products. Most of the time when we see our product, we want them to be polished before we patronize in them. It cannot be like that. Those of us who know how Japan came from, the manufacturing of vehicles, do you know the first car that was manufactured in Japan? If it is given to you today, you say, The children will say, yuck. Me and you will not have any terminology for it, but the children will say, yuck. But why did Japan able to come this far? Because of patronage. I brought these two products here. This is black soap. You see the packaging? This is hair products. You see the packaging? It can test every market in this world, isn't it? But they did not come this far just one day. They've come, and I've known this woman for 15 years. If you see her first package, it wasn't good at all. But some of us decided to patronage in the products. And that is how she has managed to come this far. These products are good, authentic, natural products. But when me and you, we see our products made in Africa, the next thing is, are we sure the standard is good? Are we sure they are of good quality? They are. Patronize. And you see that as you patronize made in Ghana product, as you patronize in made in Africa product, what are you doing? You are investing in the businesses. The businesses will expand. Somebody asked me, how much is this? So I said, £10. Oh, it's very expensive. I said, no, why is it not expensive? You see it as expensive because you don't know how natural it is. That's number one. Number two, because of funds, they are not operating at their optimum. And if me and you patronize, they'll be able to operate at their optimum. And as they operate at their optimum, prices will do what? This is simple as economics, isn't it? So let's patronize made in Ghana product. I don't say that you need, I don't say you have money to waste or whatever. But our people are here. Just buy one product. Just one. £10, £20, £25. I don't think it will kill any one of us here. So let's do our best to patronize in those who have come to exhibit so that tomorrow they can bring more products. I don't even know whether they manufacture themselves or they bring from Africa. If they don't manufacture themselves, they need to go and bring more, isn't it? And they'll be creating jobs there. So let's do that to help ourselves. Thank you.
Wow. Patronage, patronizing. supporting. That's what we need to do. Keep supporting. You still have a chance to go and support the vendors in there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our last panel, I think, for the afternoon. And we are going to focus on reparations and future advocacy beyond apologies. And now that the groundwork has been set for our next panel topic of this future advocacy, please help me welcome once again Chris Desai, who will sit with his panelists and look into how reparative justice can and should look in the future. Please help me welcome Chris one more time.
Well, hope is in sight. Last panel, so don't worry, we need full energy for this. And I think, to be honest, the most important question is upon us today, and we're going to ask the Reverend, why are there so many single Christian women here? We're here to have a conversation that goes beyond symbolism. I was honored to actually moderate the entire reparations panel at the House of Lords by David. And when I opened that, I said, I am not qualified. I don't think anyone in the world is qualified to have these conversations. No one that's alive today went through it on both sides of the party. But what we need to do is give justice. And the most important thing, when we talk about reparations, we need to talk about equity. Equity is the key thing here. When you hear that word reparations, you think money. And the problem is money doesn't solve everything if things aren't changing structurally, if this is going to repeat itself again, just in a different form, right? That's one of the issues that we say slavery is over. Actually, it's not. It happens just in a different way. There's a glass ceiling a lot of the times and things like that. So we need to look into this. I'm going to invite the panelists on. If we could have a big round of applause for Esther. I've nicknamed her the Lion because when she gets going, my goodness, the stage is going to rock. Esther, keep it easy today. She didn't even listen to that, I know. Can we have Reverend Ronald Nathan? Not on this one, anyone on that. And can we have Priya Luca? One, two. So we're going to kick off straight into this because I know you have been here a long time, but this is one of the most important conversations, and I hope that we can give justice and we can give tangible ways forward. This isn't a conversation to get angry about, even though obviously anger is one of the first things that comes to mind. We need tangible solutions. We need to move forward on it. We actually need to have progress in every aspect, from finance, from governance, from actually on the ground opinions. So I'm going to kick this off, and Esther, if you don't mind me going with you, I'm going to ease her into it. Esther has been in reparations, a scholar, activist, legal strategist, Pan-Africa for a long time. I mean, your career, I think, speaks for itself, to be honest, on so many levels, and the industry recognizes you for everything you've done. And I'm going to start with, you've long argued that reparations are not simply financial redress, but a progress also of holistic repair. What's your thoughts on that?
Sure. Let me take this one. Thank you. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for that introduction. So reparations is an ancient concept, okay, centuries old. But the root of the meaning of reparations is repair. And an aspect of repair, in some cases, is compensation, which is what everybody tends to jump to. But in international law, compensation is only one of 5 aspects of reparations, and reparations should be holistic and multifaceted. So the first aspect of any reparations process is stopping the harm. And we're talking in this context about legacies of enslavement and colonialism, neo-colonialism, imperialism. One of those harms that many people can relate to and have experienced is racism. Okay, that is a direct legacy of African chattel enslavement. So there is this notion that, well, we didn't experience chattel slavery, so we don't really have a case. Actually, legally, our people's case begins with looking at the socio-economic inequalities and injustice that are here today and how they came to be that way. And also our own experiences of dispossession that has been touched on in this room. So that's stopping the harm. Then there's restitution, which is really to put us back in a position that we would have been in, but for, and we heard from Restitution Capital about stolen patrimony, which is one aspect, okay, in terms of, and he spoke about the restitution of capital in terms of illicit financial flows this century alone. Let's go back a few hundred years and see what that would add up to. But it's also about restoring our rights, restoring our identity, restoring our right to belong to homelands. For African people, that's the African continent, that we have been dispossessed of our citizenship and denied access to stolen patrimony because we are not recognized as belonging. But multinational corporations and others are stealing that wealth today and actually trying to claim some type of right. And that's why our citizenship and our role as the diaspora matters. So it's not necessarily even about physically living in Africa. It's about us exercising our citizenship globally, but having a say on how the resources of our mother continent are utilized, okay? And then there's compensation, which is not just about money, but it could be about land, it could be about trade justice, it could be about, you know, all of those ways in which we put an economic value on harm, on oppression, on loss, on the damage, and not just to us, to our environments as well, to our food systems, all of what has been spoken about today. And then there's rehabilitation, which speaks to aspects of healing, intergenerational kind of healing, healing with amongst us, all the divisions that we have around identity that are impacting us, access to justice, access to psychosocial therapeutic interventions, everything that a people need to re-establish ourselves so that we can assert our own agency to actually implement the changes that we need to see. It's not about somebody fixing us, it's about us fixing ourselves, okay?
Whoa.
And then there is the satisfaction, which is called symbolic repair, and that might be like changing the curriculum, changing street names, pulling down statues of those that colonized us and are glorified, telling the accurate, our story, narratives were discussed earlier, our narratives and our contribution to civilization building. And finally, and for me the most important, is guarantees of non-repetition, which is how do we ensure that our reparations process creates a world and you know, whereby we no longer experience all the legacies and impacts that we do. That is systemic change, that is structural change. And that is ensuring that we have a future and that our children have a future and that they are not left to fight these same battles over and over again.
I told you. Now you see, now you know. Okay, breathe, we've got this. So, moving on. I'm going to go to you, Priya. You've highlighted how global financial systems, and you've just touched on that there as well, Esther, that global financial systems are built on legacies of colonial extraction. We heard obviously earlier from Restitution Capital, and you know he's highlighted many of these things. It continues to happen. So what can we do to challenge that?
So I think that First of all, we need to not accept the ways, the policies, the programs that are coming out of multilateral institutions that are being forced on countries that have been formerly colonized but are still colonized by the entrapments of these processes. Is that a bit better? Sorry. So my kind of experience comes as working as an economist. I've worked on issues of economic development and sustainability in Africa and the Caribbean. And that's involved working with policymakers and with bilateral partners on the issue of aid and resources. And what I've seen is that, there are these huge infrastructure and portfolio projects, like, just the World Bank alone, its project and portfolio for the Caribbean is worth 3.3 billion. Over the history of aid disbursements to Africa, that's estimated at 3 trillion. But what has happened to the improvement of people's lives with all of that resource transfer? In both regions, there are extreme challenges of poverty, and there's not enough resources going on essential spending for just human rights. So what I mean by this is that many people face challenges in accessing the most basic right to education, the most basic right to health, the most basic rights to social services. And I think that for me, after working in these areas as an economist, what we're missing and what we need to move to is a real recognition of the greater injustices of history and the legacies that Esther has talked about, and thinking very differently about what is prescribed to us as the way that we should be, adopting policies, adopting the multilateral institutions' ways. So for me, it starts with kind of, a really honest, truth-telling process, a process in which communities are able to establish their own sovereignty in designing what kind of remedy and what kind of recognition of harm to form the idea of remedy is needed. So it essentially starts with, a much more honest reappraisal of how injustice has arisen for the regions of the Caribbean and Africa, and then thinking in a really truth-telling way of like, what do people feel are the best approaches to tackle these? And I think that in that, it's really, really significant to take on the point that Esther has said already about structural racism as the legacy of enslavement, of colonialism, of human trafficking that we've seen, from 1517 to 1867. We've seen 12.5 million as, just an official figure, likely to be a lot more. And we've seen many children who've been killed and held captive in that. Now, when we think about that devastation for the regions, for Africa, for the Caribbean, what we see that's continued as well is so vital in this, because we've seen an entrenched pattern of unfair trade terms that have persisted and unfair exchange as well. And this highly exploitative and extractive period of British and European history has left like major impediments. So until we actually think about why we see like such enduring inequalities between countries and stop trying to fix it through kind of just piecemeal approaches of aid and resource transfers that are largely predicated on Western colonial terms, I don't think we can move forward until we move away from that policy kind of, prescription that has been, just kind of mandated on countries across the regions that we are really concerned about.
I mean, yeah, a round of applause for that. I remember hearing at the reparations conference when a speaker said that reparations is not charity, right? It's not aid. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to get over and get into our heads, that actually reparations is not a charity. It's not a good thing to do. I think, as Esther said, it's the right thing to do. So moving quite organically on to yourself, Reverend, many argue, and I think you can see from the conversation so far, reparations is a huge topic. It is massively complicated. This isn't a simple thing. There is no simple solution. And I think Esther highlighted that, and Priya highlighted that quite well. How do you respond pastorally and politically to communities that are feeling disillusioned by slow progress? That what really is happening, if we look at the global state of reparations, what is happening, because it doesn't look like a lot's being done. How do you respond to the community, like spiritually?
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I sit accused of leading an organization that has marginalized single women. So I have to address that, right? However, I'll answer that question later, right? To come to your question, Chris, as a pastor of a church known as the Freedom Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, the Church of Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass, and Harriet Tubman, it falls upon me as a church leader to have to speak to the situation that Western European Christianity sanitized, baptized, and justified the enslavement of Africans. Okay? We cannot get away from that. We do not need to try to avoid it. That is what occurred. However, Africans have never accepted systems imposed upon them. They have always sought to make sure that those systems liberate and empower them. And where it hasn't, it has to be challenged. Okay? And so that means we have to challenge the very theologies that we receive from European Western missionary agencies and so forth. And one of those is the relative passivity that operates within Christian denominations here in the Caribbean and in Africa. Okay? I was checking the statistics, and there are 526 million people who claim to be Christians on the continent of Africa. Okay? When we ask what is being done in terms of removing the legacy of enslavement, colonialism, and neocolonialism, the church seems to have taken a backseat on those matters. And that cannot remain like that.
That really goes into my next question for yourself, actually. What unique role should a black church or religious institution like your own play in advancing that agenda? Is it for you to support people on their paths, or do you actually feel that the church should take a proactive step forward and lead that reparations movement?
Well, the black church is, let me say, it's heterogeneous in the sense that it is not one institution, and many times our expectations is that it is one institution that can do all that needs to be done. So we need to address, for example, the plethora of denominations that exist that further divide us. Before we can really play the role, I was speaking to a young man just a while back, and I said to him that the black church has not used its institutions and systems to even bring economic empowerment to our communities. Because where we spend our money, that's where we create wealth. Yes. Where we save our money, that's where we create investments. And if we save our money away from ourselves, so I don't know how many people here know of the Pentecostal Community Bank. Let me see your hands, if you, okay? Just a few of us. That is our leading black financial institution in this country. And all of us ought to have an account in it. All churches ought to have an account, but only somewhere in the region of 300 churches do. And we are in a country where there are over 4,000 black churches.
Okay. Phenomenal. Esther, moving to yourself, this is a question which I know you're going to rise to the challenge, but many governments default to apologize as a political strategy. One thing that's been spoken about a lot is that when a government or an institution officially apologizes, it then sets the course of motion that more will be wanted from that institution, that taking accountability for something is then responsibility. So what mechanisms, legal or otherwise, can compel states to move from maybe a symbolic speech or acknowledgement to structured, enforceable, and repatriatory justice?
That's a very difficult question to answer because ultimately it's about power, yeah? And the governments that are responsible in terms of especially European governments, in our case, they have the power to deny accountability, to deny international law when it comes to this issue. You know, other groups, injustices, might get some degree of recognition, and that has happened. Not full repair, as any group would, or people would be entitled to. So it is about power. One of those landmark moments, just to give you an example, was in 2001, when 168 governments around the world acknowledged that slavery, meaning slavery, African chattel enslavement, because you're here, well, lots of people have been enslaved, but it was specifically African people and our diaspora, wherever we were trafficked to. There was a recognition by these 168 governments of the UN, right, that slavery was a crime against humanity. Why does that matter? Because in international law, a crime against humanity or crimes against humanity are one of the 5 most serious crimes or violations that you can commit. They're the most serious, right? And so for centuries, there was this attempt to deny that what happened was illegal. It was illegal by African law. It was even illegal by international law. But the British government, since we're here in the UK, has consistently argued, well, it was legal. And then with that comes, well, there's no accountability because we haven't done any wrong. And in 2001, when there was this recognition, who do you think was one of the key governments that was fighting that language? It was actually the British government and the European Union. And at the time, the leader of the House of Lords was Baroness Amos. Baroness Amos, we know her, right? Yeah. One of our own. And she was the person who stood up on behalf of the House of Lords and tried to water down this symbolic declaration. Okay? So we have to be about truth-telling on the role that we also play in furthering empire. But yet we're held up as being successful because we've arrived and we are heading up strategic positions. So what did that do? What it did, it meant that European governments have denied accountability. So there has been an apology in the Netherlands that was quite well worded and was done through a good process of consulting affected communities, descendants of those peoples that had been enslaved in Africa and also the Caribbean by the Dutch state. But that apology just meant that the Dutch state was able to allocate 200 million euros to addressing the legacies, but without any involvement of the groups, the autonomous organizing groups of our people. So again, I come back to this issue of power. And unless we as a people are able to catalyze more and more people into getting active on reparations, they will keep doing this with us because they feed on our ignorance. Now, could you imagine this happening to another group? Let's just say the Jewish Holocaust. Any Jew or a Palestinian, for instance, any person that is either Jewish or Palestinian has a strong sense of what their people's struggle is, right? And you wouldn't have
necessarily any of their professionals being in a position where they could make a difference, where they could exercise power and voice, not aligning with their group cause. But that happens with us every day, because many of us don't want to raise our head above the parapet because we know there are consequences, people can lose jobs, and we're trying to survive. But until we actually are willing to take the risks that our ancestors took to be free, then we are going to keep on getting this treatment. Because what we are showing is that we have not yet arrived as being full human beings. Because any human being, the first law of nature is self-preservation. And we haven't yet learned to do that. That is one of the legacies when you disempower a people and actually instill in them learned helplessness and learned dependency. And that is what we have to overcome for ourselves. No one's going to do that for us.
Reverend, this goes to yourself. Echoing what Esther said there, that this generation, people like Esther are fighting this. This is the time, this is the place. But how do you, or how does the congregation inspire and equip the next generation to take ownership of this reparations advocacy, that it won't be lost, that it won't be a situation of our grandparents or our parents? How do we equip the next generation to continue this conversation?
Okay, I think I also want to add and make sure that the reparations issues are not captured by elitist forces, because that is also a threat. It would seem to me, therefore, that we need a pedagogy, a way of teaching that conscientizes our congregations and our communities. What do I mean by that? I mean that our Sunday school material have to move from just talking about Daniel in the lion's den and start talking about all of our hymns, all of, as I love John Wesley, but John Wesley was in the 18th century, okay? We need to sing songs that talk about our liberation. We need to sing songs that educate us about reparations. We need to show the link between climate justice and the issues about enslavement and the need for reparations. We need to understand that the debt crisis, we need to understand that the hurricane that hit Jamaica. See, just one other illustration. I took a survey of a church I was pastoring, which is predominantly Jamaican, 150 or so members at the time. And I asked how many of them had sent a barrel to Jamaica in that given year. Okay? We calculated that there were 90 barrels that were sent from a congregation of 150 in that year. The value of those barrels was 40,000 pounds. Okay? I said, why are we sending barrels? Because I'm trying to get my congregation to engage the issue of debt and the inequalities that we go through in trying to support our country. So that's the kind of thing. We have to change our pedagogy, the way we teach and what we are teaching, but also we need to have, sorry for the long words, epistemology. The way we know things, we need to also contextualize that. There's a conversation about decolonialism that has to begin with the church. Okay, we have to begin to see God looking like us and see God as being attacked when we are attacked.
Priya, this goes to you. what role can international deployment institutions and philanthropic bodies play in the reparatory justice without replicating these colonial models that you've spoken about? Because a lot of times that when, you know, this Western saviorism, even people of the Caribbean African diaspora, born in the West, we have this Western saviorism. And one of, you know, speaking just briefly about our own projects in Africa, if the community there isn't part of the decision making, isn't running the board or have a stake in it, are we, even as people of color in the UK, not just going to replicate colonial models in trying to have this justice? How do we tackle this? And is this happening?
I mean, I think it really comes to like the idea of like rethinking what justice is through a reparations lens, through a reparative and a repair lens. And I think for very long we've been told that what people, what communities and what groups need on the continent is more economic development and more poverty eradication strategies. But actually what organizations, some organizations in the justice, in the aid sector, in the kind of spaces of kind of the UK-based organizations that we've seen, there has been a moment where, you know, following the murder of George Floyd, we have seen a kind of movement towards decolonization and entering a space of trying to have some education towards reparations. But I think that, you know, more recently there's been more of a quietening down on those issues. And that tells you so much, because I don't think, you know, I think it's often like, what is the flavor of the kind of social issue of the day? And reparations is not that. Reparations is a holistic, you know, rethink around kind of re-envisioning and building alternatives, alternative ways of knowing, of understanding, of relationships that are planet affirming. And, you know, the term planetary repair in the African reparations movement that Esther leads, you know, which I try and support through my research, in this, there is this sense of a shared ecological home. So, you know, when you think of like where organizations are and whether they are reifying power dynamics, yes, they are. They are to a large extent because they usually operate through donor-based models. Donors' metrics are based on kind of, you know, a very westernized sense of colonial logics that still endure today, you know, in all the kinds of ways that we monitor and evaluation. You know, all of how what good looks like is centered from a kind of Western sense of knowing and being. So I think it does go back to kind of the epistemologies. And, you know, for me as an academic, like writing kind of, you know, my work on reparations, one of the biggest things that I've encountered is, you know, activists really saying, actually, the harm is like in actually the enduring sense of kind of a kind of Western domination of knowledge that really continues and is infiltrated through all of these sectors, the business sector, the academic sector, you know, economics, the very framework of economics, economic governance that, you know, really rules the kind of patterns of structural exchange between countries. So where do we start in a way when, you know, we know, actually we should be examining whether we need whether organizations that are imparting aid and imparting within that a very damaging vision of kind of what success and sustainable development looks like, we need to examine whether those organizations are needed. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think in a lot of spaces there is a kind of, you know, well, what would like working towards a kind of next stage of what justice could be delivered from look like? And that's where I think the proposals for a commission for inquiry, the processes that Esther is leading with others in the African reparations movement are so vital.
Well, this comes perfectly into this last part in closing. Priya, 1 minute. What is a solution that you think, right, or a framework that is tangible, that can be done now, that everyone in the room could actually be a part of or should be looking at in your wide variety of kind of, you know, aspects, the field that you're studying? One thing that could propel reparations justice.
So, because we're in the UK, I have to say that there is a process, there is an all-party parliamentary group on African reparations. It has started a really engaged and important dialogue that, you know, I would really urge everyone to find out more about. On Monday, there is a debate towards an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth, justice, and reparatory justice that's, trying to start the process towards what a consultation or what a kind of engagement of a wider nature would look like. So I'd say get involved. The process is there at the stage of wide engagement. So yeah, let's engage together really.
Reverend, same question to you. 1 minute. What could someone do in here? What is the church doing? It was amazing what you were speaking about, the barrels. What can be done right now as a tangible to progress this conversation?
I want to start from where Priya left off and say, get engaged. But get engaged in the institutions that you're a part of. If you go to church, if you go to the mosque, if you go to the temple, begin to engage that conversation at that level. Do not let people shut you up just because they don't know. Okay? Get engaged, ask questions, and get a little group together and begin to have discussions and so forth, because we'll need you to mobilize when the commission comes around.
And finally, are you ready for this? You ready? Okay, well, Esther, the floor's yours.
I'm just going to support what my two colleagues have said. Yeah, because I'm one of the key drivers of this proposal for a commission of inquiry. Why do we want it? Most reparations settlements, in terms of, we're talking about masses, millions of people that are going to be affected. So we can't just have these little small piecemeal policies and programs or one organization. In the UK, we need a national dialogue that really is going to be international because of the role of global Britain and how it's still impacting our people's lives in Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, and everywhere else. So that commission of inquiry is one of the main ways that you get reparations settlements, right? Or proposals. The other way is lawsuits, but they are not very good in dealing with masses of people. The third way is revolution. So which one do you think is the most viable in a so-called Western liberal parliamentary democracy? It is a commission of inquiry where everybody who is working in this space will be able to give testimony. You yourselves who are impacted, all of those mothers whose intergenerational impoverishment or criminalization, the human rights abuses that we continue to experience, we want to hear from you. Those of you who've got economic models and solutions, we want to hear from you. But we need a national process that will be international, where we can bring each other up to speed, we can be accountable, and we can work out what those remedies are for not only ourselves, but for our people worldwide.
Can we all stand up for that, please? Thank you. Come on. That was a hard topic, and that was very brave of everyone to speak about this. Round of applause for the amazing panelists.
Yes, of course. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I can see you're properly engaged. I love that. That was certainly enlightening. Thank you to our panelists for a powerful exploration of reparations, advocacy, and the pathways to actual tangible change. It is a vital conversation that demands both courage and continuity. Please continue these discussions. So now we are going to inject a little bit more creativity and culture into our afternoon. And we are going to welcome back Tariq Brown, who will enlighten us with some lovely poetry and spoken word. Please welcome Tariq Brown back to the stage.
All right. We'll do this one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes. I'm going to keep this brief because I understand everyone's faculties have been into listening today. Just raise your hand if you've been to a poetry event before. Oh, what? All right, then. All right, cool. So when we like something that someone says, what do? Can I get some clicks, please? Yeah? And if you really like something, can I get a mmm? All right, then the room is warm. Okay, so as I said, I work for a few organizations, but one of the campaigns that I done recently was around what's going on in Congo at the moment. They call it the Cobalt Crisis, but it is a form of oppression, slavery, and genocide. And I wanted to try and capture that in a poem. So I'm just going to ask for silence across the room. But if you hear something that I say and you like it, give me the clicks. Yeah, clicks. All right. I'll go slow. You don't need a TV to know we have a series of criminal minds. You see, it's just another big bang the way this first world divides, for as far as cons go, they treat Congo in this criminal affair. Married to the money, so change is never rare. They don't see with a care, that means they just are. Isn't it funny how the matters of the past only matter in the past despite my scars? So please excuse my French, but every bon voyage led to fucked up parts that fucked up the cards, even shuffled my past. Now kings and queens want our diamonds and are willing to break hearts they don't see with a care, that means they just are. And you have to be a special type of ace to be part of this club, who leaves spades in graves and jacks kingdoms for everything opposite to love. They're playing a different game. It should have been Cluedo from the start. Now it's supply and demand to supply our demand in chance. For the mouths that are always asking, they trade it and market and trade our market, so it's corporate carnage that leaves corpses for caskets. No, if they want your bag, they'll come with more than a few baskets. They'll put a pound in and trolley out all the stock that you're parked with these supermarkets. Aim at the working class, that's another definition of target they're armed with. Disarming answers to why it's straws that we're grasping. I had to stop watching time when I clocked it was alarming, but I had to wake up. For there's a wake in Congo. And I look to the flag as I pay my respects. That's a blue river with a red slash down his chest with a star on the left. I wish it was guiding them to Bethlehem, but that rests in the hands of the IDF, that's Palestine. The Holy Lands are very much dead and alive. Far from a natural disaster, the way I've had to watch this land slide, and I'm still trying to find time to read between the lines. For you should never judge a book by its cover, but the days of judgment is what this book is covered in. Blood, sweat, tears prevail amongst other things, and society does everything they can to publish it. They should have used a demo in democracy, for I overthink how they underthink, yet my people are the underlings underground crumbling, how greedy. Can I get a how greedy? How greedy. There we go. How much do you need? I guess it's everyday make dough, that's why they struggle to break bread, but they give out last suppers like charity is free. Children in the dirt on their knees where please turns to pleads to liberate their dreams from bleeding. Psychological wounds are impeding on my freedom despite my spiritual reasons. There's a ceiling to my healing. So my spirit is weeping and is grieving, and trust me, is killing me softly. For you need more than a few G's to stop beef, but that's costly, so there's always opportunity at stake. I say it again. Beef usually means there's opportunity at stake. So you know that it's rare that blood doesn't find its way onto the plate, but the contrast is they get a well done for all the greens that they raid and the fruits of their hate. They build a real estate on every state that has a natural resource, so there's always more rooms for mistake. It's continental corruption. They've put cracks in my continent to seal the gaps of their incompetence is crystal clear. Congolese cobalt generates 4.44 billion in exports a year, yet the average Congolese salary is far from a corporate career. It's $449 per every 365 days. That's $1.23 for every 24 hours, give or take. So no wonder I've been left with a sour taste for these seasoned criminals present their crimes as plain on a private plane with the iPhones playing. The lies these diplomatic spies are saying just don't make sense. For they'll kill a community for a coin and still tell you to donate a pence. So don't believe the words that they say. For until these cons go, Congo will never be the same. Poem. Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for your ears and your patience and listening. For those of you who haven't had poetry before, this is your first taste. And for those of you who have, thank you for listening. Please, if you're on Instagram, I go by I am Tariq, so I do a lot more poetry, like I said, on people, power, and politics. And this is where the gap exists, is like, we have all these statistics and research, but can they communicate what people are feeling on the ground? And that's where poetry and creativity and storytelling can link. So if you have these researches and you have these statistics, link up with the people that can tell the stories, okay?
Wow. That's all I can say is wow. Thank you so much, Tariq. You have moved the room beyond expectation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to wrap up, and this is my opportunity to just tie in all of the themes that we've spoken about and touched on today before I hand over to the ACSIS core team. So I'd just like to take a moment to thank all of our speakers and panelists for an exceptionally rich day of dialogue. Exceptionally. As we reach the point where our themes intersect, it's clear that the conversations we've had today are not isolated threads. They are deeply connected strands in a shared tapestry of development, justice, and growth. Across diplomacy, entrepreneurship, reparation, and resilience, one idea has stood out. Sustainable transformation requires collaboration within nations, across regions, and among all of us in the diaspora. From our emissaries this morning, we were reminded that diplomacy is not only about formal agreements, it is about nurturing trust and interdependence. Their reflections underscored that development and resilience are not goals achieved in isolation, but outcomes built on mutual respect and solidarity. Through our entrepreneurs and innovators, we saw the vibrancy of African and Caribbean creativity, whether through finance, technology, or the creative industries, all pointing toward an emerging model of growth powered by inclusion. Each of them showed us that when we invest in people, we generate not only profit, but purpose. In our discussions on women's leadership and youth empowerment, we saw that equity is not a side conversation. It is central to the sustainability of every economy represented here. We cannot power growth in the Global South without the full participation of those who have historically been left out of decision-making spaces. The health sector leaders who joined us reminded us that well-being is the bedrock of prosperity. There is no development without healthy citizens and communities. There is no justice when access to care remains unequal. Their call for prevention, awareness, and compassion resonated deeply with the wider mission of ACSIS, to empower and to heal through knowledge, connection, and care. And finally, our conversations on reparations and advocacy challenged us to look beyond apology and into accountability. They reminded us that honoring heritage means more than remembering. It means redressing imbalance, creating opportunity, and building systems that reflect the dignity and worth of all people of African and Caribbean descent. When viewed together, these sessions have offered us something powerful, a panoramic view of what the Global South can become when heritage, justice, and growth are aligned. We have seen that resilience is not just recovery, it is reinvention. That justice is not just advocacy, it is action. And that heritage, when honored, is not a story of the past, but a compass for the future. As we transition shortly to our closing reflections, let us carry forward the spirit of what we've built here today, a shared understanding that our work is interconnected, our progress interdependent, and our future inseparable. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now hear from the ACSIS core team.
Hello, 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 hello. How's everything? I think I have to get used to being part of the ACSIS core team, but please, the chairman of ACSIS, please.
Wow, we've had an interesting 2 days. It's been rather an emotional journey for me, you know. When this was conceived last year and launched at the House of Lords, there was a feeling of accomplishment, but nervousness, because there was a large amount of uncertainty in the community, because you know, when you launch something new, there's this feeling that it's not going to take off. You get this feeling because people aren't really getting the story, and it's not transcending to them in the way that you expect them to. So I left with a feeling of anxiety and cautiousness last year. But now, I'm not one for tears, because, you know, my core has been molded and nurtured in the military. So, you know, we have a different way of dealing with emotion. But nonetheless, I have to say that the turnout these past 2 days has been immense for me. The discussions, the quality of the content, the ambition that was in many cases shared by some of these speeches in terms of what possibilities exist for Africa and the Caribbean, really inspiring. And then there were points where one felt that ACSIS was here for many years before. It felt as if we were just continuing a legacy that has been with us for 5 or 6 years, where in actuality, this is our first birthday, you know? This is day one of ACSIS. But anyway, look, I'm not here to give any speeches because, to tell you the truth, I don't have the energy. And you've heard enough talk for the past 2 days. It's Saturday. You should be somewhere having fun, maybe having a chicken at Nando's or something, but here you are with me. And Carol, that's not a clue for where we should have dinner tonight. I'm just saying. Yeah. But look, I think this is an opportunity for me to thank my team for a tremendous job. And I think that's where I feel the most emotion, because my team are all volunteers. Yeah. They're all volunteers, you know. Like me, I work nights to keep the lights on. So ACSIS is a part-time gig. And for all of them, they all have their own jobs. You know, my deputy chair, the guy in the beard, who has just been appointed, he runs a chamber. So he is extraordinarily busy, you know, but he answered the call, and he's come, and in the past 10 days, it's 10 days you've been appointed, right? Something like that. Tremendous results. He's a results-orientated, driven former military man. And yeah, that is his value. So look, let me just point out the people who have made this whole thing possible, and then get off the stage. So, to my immediate right, there is the gentleman with the ponytail, Aaron Adal. He's our creative director, and he has been with me from the beginning of ACSIS. So all of this stuff that you see, all of that is his work. All the badges and the designs, the digital work, that's Aaron's work. Then next to him is Alice. Alice is a content writer, producer. So a lot of the stuff that you would see on socials will be her creativity in motion. And I've been very lucky to have her on my team. So thank you, Alice. Then to her immediate right is Thomas Bold, who is the marketing communications manager, who's responsible for our public appearance and the way we do things and where we are positioned in the market. Thomas. Don't look back, come. And walking up there is Sakina Sani. Sakina has been amazing. I mean, without Sakina, I don't know where we would have been this weekend. I mean, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we on WhatsApp or we on emails trying to get the program right, making sure that the people who have dropped out are replaced, making sure the people who have come in at the last minute are somehow fit into the program. It's been constant. There was a night last week where we were both suffering with the flu. You should have heard that conversation. I mean, and I don't know if it's a Nigerian thing, but when somebody sneezes or coughs, they tend to always say, sorry, sorry. And I'm thinking, why is she saying sorry? So half of the conversation was her apologizing to me. But it was very productive. And yeah, so she helped to really streamline things with the program, making sure that everything was properly well timed and all of that stuff. So Sakina Sani. Yes, so, and then there's the lady, the timekeeper, the dreaded timekeeper, Miss I, who did an excellent job in ensuring that things ran on time. So I'm quite pleased that she's always been on my team and she's always been there when she's most needed. Miss Sai Good. You're lucky I can't pelt you from here. Right, so the last person I'd like to acknowledge that I can remember, that I can actually see in the room, is Atto and his team. Those guys making sure that this works, and that works, and that everything around you in terms of the ambiance of the place is on point. So Atto. Good, good. You see that's why she's so useful? Oh, yes! Gladys! So sorry. But we only just met, so forgive me, right? But Gladys has been really good with the content for months. And yes, she added great value to the kind of images that you would have seen on social media and whatnot. So, Gladys, thank you. And then, of course, we have the reception team. Without them, you couldn't be here today, or you'd be bunched up outside somewhere in the cold. These are all volunteers. I think one of them has traveled all the way from Leicester. Yeah, come up, volunteers, come up. Travel all the way from Leicester. Liverpool, I'm told, Liverpool. Travel from Liverpool to come support this venture. Yeah? Great, great, great. They're shy, so you won't see their faces. And then, of course, last but not least, Elizabeth Flanders. Elizabeth Flanders, though she's not a volunteer, she's a contractor, but she has demonstrated the kind of support and dedication that ACSIS really needs. She's from Grenada, but she behaves like she's from my country. You know, but she's a workaholic, and she's put all of this together, the arrangement with the tables and the chairs and what have you. So give it up for Elizabeth. And then, of course, last but not least, this is the last but not least. The lady in the African outfit at the back, who keeps my bed warm at night. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and I thank the vendors who have, you know, graced us with their many wares in many ways, and I'm hoping that, you know, they approach ROI at some point. But nonetheless, they're part of the ACSIS family now, and wherever we go, I'm not so sure I'll take them to Ghana, but you know, yeah, the ACSIS. Have I done something wrong?
No. I was told to join you.
Okay, all right. I thought I was going to get lick upside my head. Well, thank you very much. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. ACSIS 1 is now officially 1 year old, and we're looking forward to putting better events together for you, and we will let you know where we will be in a year's time. Thank you very much, and I think we now go for drinks at the back until 8:30. What? Well, you want to do that? Well, but I can't do that. I can't do that.
All right, then. Can we have a team picture, please? Can we have a team photo up to the front? Yeah, why are you holding it for me? We did something earlier today. Hello, hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. I'm almost stressed. Right. You're quite new here.
Yes.
Drop on. Right. What drop on? A drop on lens. Yeah. Yeah. Who have you do now, man? And I'll jump pictures. Right. I'm a ball.